good morning, and welcome to the VSA Capital 5-Minute Morning Miner, Monday the 7th of April. And here we go, it's a new week. It's beautiful sunshine still. We're heading towards Easter. Pleased to say my wife completed the London Landmark Half Marathon yesterday in 2 hours, 38 minutes and raised nearly £3,000, just shy of it. Anybody wants to just top her up a little bit, please do. She'd be delighted. She did really well. She's not a natural runner. And I'll tell you what, wandering around the city, I managed to find 7 points, I think, to cheer her on. It was great to see the city with music playing, people running, smiling. Completely different probably from this morning. Morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a bright sunny day outside too, but the market's sure not showing it.
Yeah. No, there's a few macro things here that are worth just touching base on before we go through individual things. China is restricting exports. Obviously, a little bit of retaliation here on certain metals. Probably the key one, as far as we're concerned, is tungsten, but they're also on beryllium, bismuth, indium, and molybdenum. I also see this morning the EU is going to pump 12 billion into critical metals in Central Asia. That's going on with the Chinese and the Russians. But what we are actually seeing at the moment, as well as a tariff trade war, is actually a commodities war, because people are suddenly realizing they've got to have access to these commodities. And so here we have people, we already know that Trump, is trying to get critical metals in Ukraine, the DRC, Greenland, Canada, the EU is now doing it. China's been doing it for years. And when you have a commodities war, that is going to push commodities up, because suddenly people are going to realize how valuable they are. That is why we're in a commodities bull market. Now, obviously, again, going back to that little bit of tungsten, tin and tungsten, the UK actually has some of the best resource in those two down in Cornwall and Devon in the world. If only this UK government could see it. So the only thing is, I'd love to say Tungsten West should be buying it. The capital structure course is all wrong, unfortunately, now because of that terrible convertible bond that was put in place. It's well known that I was very against it. That's why we got fired as broker. But of course, unfortunately, the convertible bond now controls that business. But actually, as a little example, the strategic metals, SML, which was my tip for the year, they actually have some really high-grade tin and tungsten just around the corner from Tungsten West. In fact, Tungsten West need their ore to make that mill work properly, really. So they're in a very valuable position. It's up 50% so far this year, but they just announced this morning they got a government grant for about just shy of £700,000, I think it was. But that's really key, because actually you can go drilling down in Cornwall for sort of £500,000 to £1 million. So they've actually now got some money. They can go and drill, and they will get good results, really good results. We're obviously putting together Godolphin Exploration and Tectonic to create Tamar resources. It will look very similar. We will probably somehow get similar amount of money, and we'll go drilling. When I say we act for them, but I'm a major shareholder. VSA is a major shareholder. It's quite a sort of collaborative approach. So there's actually some really, really interesting things going on in the commodity space at the moment. And it really is a space you need exposure to. Sorry, that was my intro, Paul. I'll probably take up the entire 5 minutes of the 5-minute morning miner.
Yeah,
But you can't disagree with any of that, can you?
No, I really can't. No, and as you said, Strategic Minerals did bring in, or their subsidiary Cornwall Resources brought in about £750,000 in grant funding for that exploration, and the company itself will also match that. So that's a £1.5 million pound spending program for this year for the Redmore project in particular, and that's a nice advancement that they'll be able to get some more drill holes to determine the size and scale or further advance it at this point.
It's actually quite interesting because it's right by a village called Callington, and actually it's funny enough, the mineral rights are owned by a scrapyard owner who didn't even know they had the mineral rights. But it's the nice thing is it's down a valley or the resource, so you can actually, what you can do is you can actually go in at the bottom of the valley and go underground and mine underground the ore and really not make too much of a disturbance. So it's actually the perfect place for mining ore and then just ship it over to Tungsten West to be, or wherever, to be. I mean, it could go down to Cornish Metals down to South Crofty to get processed. It's a beautiful location just by Callington. Very nice little pub there in the middle of the village as well. Anyway, what else we got, Paul?
Real quickly, just to mention that Serabi the gold producer in Brazil, and M quoted, they also put out a statement on their exploration successes they're having. And the CEO, Mike Hodgson, he had specifically made comment that they are feeling really confident now that across these projects that they'll be able to delineate a consolidated 1.5 to 2 million ounces of additional resource in the coming years here. So long life coming ahead in the story for Serabi Gold. The other big piece of news was that the ASX listed lithium and geothermal developer Vulcan Energy, they have completed the acquisition of Geox GmbH, the German firm that has operating geothermal wells. And this particular license and these assets will add about 20% to the production profile intended by Vulcan Energy in its phase one program for both energy production and lithium carbonate, or excuse me, lithium chemical production as well in Germany.
Yeah, actually, just quickly going back to tungsten, it's worth just mentioning that if you really want a tungsten play, in my view, the cheapest tungsten player in the world at the moment is ASX's EQ Resources, which we have talked about quite a lot in the past. But they obviously are producing both in Spain and in Australia, and so they actually will be looking pretty good. Also, just be aware of these markets. I mean, markets fall out of bed like this. The VIX goes through the roof. The VIX is incredibly high at 37.8. We've seen it many times before. Some people are saying, is this like the 87 crash? I don't think it is like the 87 crash. Is this like the global financial crisis in 2007-8? Probably more similar, because I think what you might see is quantitative easing, certainly in the US, coming out after this to try and print some money and get rid of the US debt through printing money. But we've seen it all before, and the best thing probably is to hold tight. If you've got cash, probably start dripping it into the market. It won't bounce back overnight, but it will slowly recover, and we will get back to the levels we were before. That's my positive note. On that note, we'll call it a day, though, and then we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks.
Very good. See you.
This podcast has been produced and edited by VSA Capital. It is intended for information purposes and not as investment advice. The information is intended for recipients who understand the risks associated with equity investments in smaller companies. Please do your own research and do not rely on a single source when making an investment decision. VSA Capital may derive fees from this content and seeks to do business with the companies mentioned.